If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that.
I honestly sit back and shake my head in awe and frequently say out loud, y'all are a trip. It's not even simply the violent insurrectionists. It's the feigned pearl clutching by people who are more outraged by January 6th than we were at Trump's indifference to black and brown life. It's the people who have been part of this nonsense for years and decades for me. It's the people who voted for him, the campaign staff, the policymakers, the media enablers. You know exactly who you are. Now, remember in 2016, after many members of the news media helped usher in this lunatic into the White House, the takeaway from many executives was, guys, we in the news didn't pay enough attention to racist white people. That's how we got those ridiculous terms like white economic anxiety and those voters of the heartland segments with a bunch of white Midwesterners in coffee shops that have never seen folks who look like this right here. Variety reported this week that former Trump aide Alyssa Farah Griffin will be the latest to join ABC's The View. Now, ABC has not made a formal announcement, but let's please not forget that this tawdry turncoat Trump loyalist quickly morphed into an opportunist after voluntarily taking jobs with the Trump administration, signing on to work for his regime, knowing full well what Trump represented. Now, let me tell you about this woman. She wrote for a right-wing conspiracy website founded by her father. She supported efforts of Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan when she worked for them on Capitol Hill. She defended Trump after he asked the Proud Boys militia to stand back and stand by. And she's an election denier. And yeah, sure, she came out and denounced the attack on the Capitol, but ain't nobody impressed with that. That was a convenient thing to do.
Oh, you know when someone's trying to manufacture some quickie credibility for themselves. Tiffany Cross-Eyes, one of MSNBC's resident sister girls, had a segment that was basically the same warmed-over DNC talking points, but the white media's trying to make it seem like she had some really hot take. Because she, in passing, said the white media is pandering to racist white people, though she didn't say white media, she just said media. Now, while it is true that she did say that it's pandering to racist white people, most of her self-serving rant was a litany of whining about Trump administration officials who the white media has been putting on TV shows. It wasn't clear whether Cross-Eyes was so much offended as she was jealous as hell. After all, she's never been asked to be on Dancing with the Stars. And the only reason Tiffany Cross even has a job is because Tamron Hall was moved on. It is true that the white media gives second careers to White House officials, and many of them have been part of disgracefully racist administrations, but Tiffany Cross left a few names out. George Stephanopoulos has been a fixture at ABC since the late 90s after he resigned from the Clinton administration. The same Bill Clinton who did nothing to crack down on police after the verdict in the Rodney King beating trial. The same Bill Clinton who cheerfully passed the '94 crime bill, which specifically targeted black people and turbocharged the prison industrial complex. The same Bill Clinton who ignored the situation in Sudan and Haiti and later on gave a pitiful non-apology apology for that. George Stephanopoulos has never been made to apologize for his involvement in the Clinton administration or had to call out Bill Clinton on any of it. Van Jones has been on CNN for years, and Obama did absolutely nothing for black people. He did nothing for us economically. He did nothing to punish the police. Nothing. Though Obama did make it a point to castigate black people in general and black men in specific every chance he got, and Van Jones has never been confronted on that, but of course, why would the white media ever do that? The garbage Obama and Van Jones spout is the white media line. Attacking black people is the white media narrative, especially at the Caucasian Nazi network. Van Jones himself has been acting like the DNC robot he is, mindlessly saying that black people have to fall on our swords to save America while we get nothing in return. And Van Jones, of course, has been the recipient of all of that cash from Jeff Bezos. I guess that's why he doesn't have much critical to say about Amazon. And speaking of saying nothing, Tiffany Cross-Eyes had said absolutely nothing about any of that at all. If Tiffany Cross-Eyes was intellectually honest, and she really wanted to call out former White House officials who took part in covering for all sorts of racist behavior, the person who she ought to be aiming her guns at is MSNBC's own Simone Sanders. Sanders was part of the Biden White House up until 8 months ago, and she was a spokesperson for Biden's campaign. When asked about the '94 crime bill that Biden wrote, and which Biden gave the nickname Biden's Law, Simone Sanders tried to claim the mass incarceration that followed had nothing to do with Biden and it was all the state's fault. When confronted about how Biden wrote the Truth in Sentencing statute, which gave the states money to change their laws, she stuttered and stammered, trying to talk around the issue. When Biden said that if black people can't decide whether to vote for him or Trump, then you ain't black, you gotta wonder if Simone Sanders was the one who gave him permission to say that. One thing's for sure, she didn't object to it. Biden promised an executive branch level police accountability commission and a so-called lift every voice plan, whatever that was. All this while Simone Sanders was campaigning for him and while she was a staffer in Biden's White House. At no point at all has Sanders ever been confronted on any of these things, any of these failures, nor will she ever be. Tiffany Cross-Eyes overlooks that both political parties have taken part in attacking black people. Both political parties play off of one another, the political equivalent of good cop, bad cop. One party is actively trying to do us in, while the other party tries to finesse us into thinking they're gonna be on our side. See, that's the reality, and it's one that Tiffany Cross will never talk about. So why should anyone listen to her? Tiffany Cross-Eyes complains that the white media executives are pandering to racist white people. Yes, like the white media Tiffany Cross works for. Joe Scarborough and Mika the Bigot Brzezinski defended the murder of Tamir Rice when the story first broke. Scarborough was the first to repeat the line of the Cleveland Police Department and say that Tamir Rice had taken the orange tip off the plastic toy gun. And Scarborough kept pushing the police line, defending the murder of a 12-year-old child. Right up until the moment the surveillance video of the murder came to light, showing that the police rolled up and shot Tamir Rice dead within seconds. The police lied, and so did Joe Scarborough, though he's never admitted to it. And never been called out on it by Tiffany Cross-Eyes. In fact, MSNBC made it a point to never question the police's narrative when they kill a black person. MSNBC also went out of their way to never look at the disciplinary records of these racist police. They did, however, make sure to report on loose cigarettes with Eric Garner and to faithfully repeat whatever the police line was that would send the message, okay, this black person was unarmed and posed no threat, but here's some dirt on him, so that means it's okay, right? The police are committing open murders, and MSNBC doesn't look at any of the police's records, doesn't tell the public about the lawsuits against these police who commit these crimes, or the public complaints, or how they got moved on from one police department to the next. MSNBC doesn't do any reporting, they do repeating. And where has Cross-Eyes been at while all this has been going on? Why, she's been in her cramped little studio set regurgitating the talking points given to her by her white media executive bosses, making sure not to say anything that indicts them or goes against their narrative. Now, while Tiffany Cross-Eyes' little hot take was mostly a lot of empty hot air, this last bit, however, was the topper.
Well, they would say, we must not forget about viewers in the Midwestern/flyover states who may feel differently than us. Yeah, I actually agree with that. I'm all for it. Let's focus on viewers in Cleveland and Chicago and Detroit and St. Louis. Because as you see, younger, more diverse audiences have begun to rely on social media for their news and information. And we've seen how problematic that can be.
Now, you notice the wording that she uses? Younger, more diverse audiences. That's not the MAGA crowd that she's talking about. That's not the smelly inbred denizens of Trump world she's talking about. Diverse. She's talking about us. And we know this is a swipe at us because she added that these diverse audiences have begun to rely on social media for their news and information, and that's problematic. Problematic for who? For the white establishment bootlicks like herself? MSNBC in particular attacked the message of the new voices of black media. Joke Reid herself had segments on her sideshow where she and other Negro shills said that they were going to teach people how to spot Russian bots on social media for the 2020 election. And what were the talking points that people should look out for? Joke Reid went on to list the words and phrases created and pushed by the new voices of black media, everything from FBA to reparations. That's how you know you're dealing with a Russian bot. Somebody says reparations. So when you see Cross-Eyes talking about diverse audiences getting their news and information from problematic social media sources, we're the ones she's talking about. Remember, for the Negro shills at these white media networks, the biggest enemy isn't white supremacy. After all, they work for the propaganda arm of white supremacy. For them, the biggest problem is and will always be black media, the black grassroots. Because we don't work for white supremacy. We work for you. And here's another pearl of wisdom from Tiffany Cross-Eye's little rant.
But we also wonder why so many gatekeepers actively ignore a growing influential market which drives culture and conversation by catering to this smaller sect of society because they are uncomfortable talking about race. Their feelings seem to always matter more than truth, history, and facts.
Gatekeepers indeed. You mean like Comcast, who Tiffany Cross works for? You see, Cross-Eyes is the one who doesn't care about truth, history, or facts. The people she works for are the gatekeepers. They are the small sect of society who are uncomfortable about race. They see their job as controlling black influence, and they don't care about truth, history, or facts because as they see it, the sheer size of the white media constitutes a monopoly. They may not be able to dominate everyone's eyeballs and ears, but they have enough reach that they can force you to come into contact with their narrative regardless. They can buy enough media space anywhere they want, so even if you don't watch their TV shows or read their newspapers and magazines or websites, they can still make it where you'll come across their narratives regardless. So to the white media, they have the power to shape reality. They can carpet bomb the public mind with a particular narrative, and hopefully enough people who see it will think that it must be basically true on some level, and they'll also be reluctant to question it because the white media will make sure there's some expert who they cite in the article or present on that TV segment who's going to act as some sort of authority and claim that the white media narrative is factual. And this particular propaganda technique does work more often than not, mainly because the people watching are individuals. They think they're alone. Sure, they disagree with what they're hearing and seeing, but they also know that they're in a room by themselves. They're isolated. The white media's greatest power is that the people watching it know that a lot more folks are hearing this white media narrative than are hearing any sort of pushback or dissent against it. It reaches large numbers of people. Even if you know it's a pack of lies, you also know that a lot of people are seeing it, and because you know so many people are seeing it, you'll also feel helpless in the face of it to change anyone's minds. Or at least that's what the white media hopes. And that's where the black media comes in. See, Tiffany Cross-Eyes is the last one to be talking about people in media who are scared of opinions and views that make them uncomfortable. I found out that Tiffany Cross-Eyes blocked me on Twitter. Now, I've never posted anything on her timeline. I think I've probably made a handful of posts that tagged her. Nothing too incendiary, by the way. I just told her that she's not fooling anyone. Now, I'm proud to say that the dregs of humanity from Karine Skank Pierre to Roly-Poly Martin have blocked me on Twitter, and that's good. It means that what I had to say reached these creeps, and they had to face reality, even if only for a moment. That's what the black media is all about. But Tiffany Cross-Eyes is in no moral or ethical position to lecture anyone about the media refusing to engage with differing opinions from a diverse audience when she herself refuses to hear anything that challenges her lies by omission from that same diverse audience. Tiffany Cross-Eyes doesn't do reporting at all. What she does is performance, and that's what galls me about her the most. She talks and acts like a white liberal sock puppet. She talks and acts the way that white liberals think black people talk and act. She's almost as annoying and cringe-inducing as that Ari Melber clown. Everything from how she occasionally peppers her asinine monologues with ebonics to her pathetic prioritization of feminine talking points. Tiffany Cross acts like she has a white female liberal in her empty head pulling her strings, using her as a meat puppet. Everything Tiffany Cross says and does comes off like it came from a white female liberal consultant, their perverted idea of what black people must be. Tiffany Cross-Eyes sees herself as a white feminist. She drives wedges of division in the black community every chance she gets. Take this brain-dead segment that she and Joke Reed did a month ago.
Right, and I love it. First of all, I love coming to America t-shirt. When I wear it, I'll give you credit in my heart. And with this blonde hair, honey, you don't need the hair says it all. You don't need any glam. But let's talk about. I'm so excited about this special. You know, you and I went on vacation together, and that's where we started brainstorming this idea of a special with our girl group. And we thought, like, how can we extend this conversation to other women? But you really had the great idea of how it would look.
The culture isn't black. The culture is black women. This is meant to divide black people into subgroups because that's divide and conquer. Get black folks to separate themselves from each other, and this way dilute their ability to have power and potency. Obviously, this is the Democrats' moronic get-out-the-vote effort to reel in black women, but it goes beyond that. I'll explain in a moment. But it just goes to show, even after all this time, the usual suspects don't have any new material. They're still running the girls rule the world line, black girl magic, the black woman is the mule of the world, the culture is black women. Oh, and just for the record, I got a word about Joke Reed's blonde hair extensions. Tacky. This was just a promotional piece for Joke Reed and Tiffany Cross doing a TV special. The tagline was that this was a gathering of influential black female trailblazers. Trailblazers? This crowd? Is that supposed to be a joke? What trails have any of them blazed? None of them is a famous first. None of them has broken any new ground. In fact, none of them are even new names. It's just the same old usual suspects, the same old bought and paid for do-nothing heifers that we've had to suffer through for several years, if not a couple of decades. Just some do-nothing social climbers like Ayanna Pressley, as well as Tyrannosaurus Burke, who won't lift a finger to protect black women if the person accused of harming a black woman is white. So this gathering of zaddy worshippers, narcissists, and black man-hating harpies is supposed to be what qualifies as representing black women? This is supposed to be the culture? So it seems that speaking up for the Breonna Taylors and the Brianna Greers and the Tatiana Jeffersons falls to the black media, that is, largely black men, to do. This is what the white media wants to convince you is some sort of half-baked sisterhood. Every single one of these egomaniacs are inventions of the white media. None of them would exist without some white multinational media company having found them, put money behind them, and presenting them to the public. They're not self-made. They have no influence because they were given platforms by white media companies who already had a huge presence without them. Without the white media or the Democratic Party, which is basically flip sides of the same coin, none of these black women would even exist. Nobody would even know that they existed. So a bunch of white media employees do a special where they do plenty of whining about what their white coworkers say about their hair, but they don't say a single word about punishing white supremacists at any level. I would actually have somewhat less contempt for these cretins if they were actually on a warpath to punish violence against black women with real prison time, and to attack these white supremacists every way they could, even if it was only for black women alone. Yes, it would be gender-warring idiocy, but at least I could respect actually putting some real pain on the white supremacists, even if it's only on the behalf of 50% of the black population. But these clowns don't even go that far. They put on this propaganda piece where they celebrate themselves for having accomplished... Well, I'm not sure. Nothing's changed. They have nothing to show for their efforts. It looks a little odd to be holding a victory dinner when you don't have any victories, but of course, this isn't about accomplishing anything. It's about trying to stroke some black women's egos and hopefully conning a few of the gullible ones into seeing these bootlicking hoochie mamas as something other than bootlicking hoochie mamas. This was the TV special Cross and Reed were pimping, and that's the perfect word to describe this gathering of bootlicks. They're super special, all right. Short bus special. But as I had stated earlier, you won't be surprised to learn that this is nothing more than a Trojan horse for a larger white media offensive. NBC has scheduled an entire series for The Culture Is, which will revolve around communities of women. They have an entire listing of who they're going to be highlighting: Black, Latina, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Indigenous women, and beyond. My problem, though, is it's not Latina, Asian American, Pacific Islander, or anyone else who was pimping this series. It was two black women, and as Joke Reed said, Tiffany Cross was the one who came up with the idea and pitched it to her. They called it The Culture Is, so yet again we have the white media attempting to dictate to us what our culture is, and using these sock puppet front Negroes to do it. This crappy Yas Queen ski-wee mess doesn't threaten white power at all, which explains why Tiffany Cross and Joke Reed are part of it. Psychological masturbation is easy. It doesn't cost white power anything, though this kind of fraud does cost black women a lot. It costs black women their lives. It's very easy to take pot shots at racists on the white right because at no time does Cross Eyes say anything about the racist on the white left, so her criticism is a distinction without a difference. She pretends to be taking on one gang of racists, white supremacy as a whole, though she did make sure to include black and brown in her monologue, but she deliberately gives a pass to the other 50% of white supremacists. And some of you were applauding her thinking she was saying some real stuff. Asinine slogans and stupid patting yourself on the back is easy. It's very easy to sit around a dinner table and say that the culture is black women, but it's very difficult to take Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, or the white executives at MSNBC and demand that they start putting pressure on these white supremacists who harm black women. See, that's hard to do. It's hard to get in Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi's faces and say you're not getting one more freaking vote from black women at all until we see some laws and some Justice Department prosecutions that put real substantive prison time on these white supremacists who harm black women. We need mandatory sentencing guidelines and to make it where judges are not able to either give light sentences or to even attempt to decide they're going to give what amounts to an acquittal from the bench. See, that's hard to do. Ayanna Pressley is a sock puppet for the Democratic Party, so she's not going to be standing up to Nancy Pelosi or calling her out. And Tiffany Cross Eyes and Joke Reed are meat puppets for the white media, so they're not going to be talking about how they need to be doing specials talking about all of these murders the police commit and how nobody's going after them or punishing them. Because that would demand that you challenge white immunity from law. And white immunity from law is the third rail of American politics and society. Breonna Taylor was murdered. And yet none of these women is demanding that Democrats run on a platform of prosecuting the police. Tatiana Jefferson was murdered years ago, and her murderer is still on the loose, being allowed to postpone the trial, and even able to have the judge recused because the judge said the trial ought to move forward. Tiffany Cross Eyes isn't terribly bothered by that. And in the last week, you had another black woman, Breonna Greer, who was arrested and put in the back of a police car without being placed in a seatbelt. And what a surprise, the officer who did that claimed that he forgot to close the passenger side door before he drove off, and then she wound up being thrown from the vehicle, I'm sure through no fault of his. So while Tiffany Cross Eyes, Joke Reed, and the amazing Zerlina are obsessing about black women having abortion rights, not one of them is obsessing about black women having the right to live. And none of them are obsessed with black women having a right to justice. Not one of them is putting Democrat leaders on the spot to demand what they are going to do to protect black women from the thugs with badges. So all that Tiffany Cross's whining amounts to is an empty gripe about media exposure. Sounds more like she's jealous than anything else. I'm sure that Cross Eyes spends every day hoping that the phone will ring and she'll finally get a White House gig herself. Hey, if a talentless goof like Corinne Stank Pierre can get a make-work-do-nothing gig at the White House, then anything's possible, right? Tiffany Cross Eyes is part of the problem, so if she wants to talk about shills who have been ignoring racism and making excuses for it, then she can save some indignation for herself. But far be it from Tiffany Cross Eyes to root against her own team, and make no mistake. White supremacy is her team because she damn sure isn't on ours. This is the playbook for 2022 and beyond. Gender warring. Meant to split black solidarity, pat black women on the heads, or at least pretend to, meanwhile totally ignoring any tangibles for black women, including tangible punishment for those who harm black women. Tiffany Cross Eyes has a weak mind and a fragile ego. There's no sense in hoping for the redemption of bootlicks like her because her mind, such as it is, was nailed shut a long time ago. Maybe if she was smarter, she could at least put together some lies that black people might fall for, but she wasn't hired for her intelligence. She was hired because she assured her white media paymasters that she could put their priorities ahead of the interest of black people, including the black women who she pretends to champion. So, Tiffany Cross Eyes, you might as well go ahead and block everyone who says something you don't like, and you don't have to worry about winning anyone over. Most people already stopped paying attention to you a long time ago. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Edward Lovett, Maurice Soul, Brian Ellis, Jerlene Harris, and Gail Johnson. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.